This is a 1998 Mackie HUI. HUI standing for Human User Interface. This device was designed to serve as a medium/hybrid type of controller for mixing engineers who were transitioning into working in the box. At the time, this device was set to integrate with DigiDesign's, now known as Avid, Pro Tools version 4.1. The primary goal of this controller was to create a more traditional feel for engineers who were used to mixing on those big industry consoles like the SSL, the Neves, and just felt awkward using a mouse and a keyboard to mix. Mackie's intention with the Mackie HUI unit was to make it available to work with various digital audio workstations. But because Avid's HUI protocol is proprietary, I do believe that is what prevented this unit from thriving with other technology in 2025. The build quality is decent, made primarily out of plastic, but the faders and knobs have more of a premium feel to them since they are made of metal and aluminum. I guess you may be wondering, why would you purchase this Mackie unit knowing that it may only work with Pro Tools? Here's a picture of it in my car, by the way. I was more curious about how well it functions in 2025, how usable it can be. I personally prefer having physical faders instead of having to drag my mouse up and down. I also was curious how it holds up in today's standards since it was made in 1998. Now, for those of you that may not know, Pro Tools was my primary DAW for mixing and recording. I have been utilizing Ableton for production, mixing, and recording as of recently, but I wanted to get back into Pro Tools, ideally to do some mixing for artists as a side hustle, since it's still very much the industry standard. It is the software that's used by all of the professionals. Now, I am running an old version of Pro Tools, not Pro Tools 4.1 of course, but Pro Tools 12 from about 10 years ago, 2015 I believe, and it works decent for the most part. I've read even using the most recent version of Pro Tools would allow this machine to function correctly. All the buttons on the unit are very responsive, and I'm able to toggle between sessions, mix window, playback, record, able to scrub through the audio. Everything seems to work fine as far as the buttons go. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite features is the ability to control plugins by using the rotary knobs on the top right corner. It works best with the provided Pro Tools plugins as it gives you the ability to scroll through different pages of the parameters. It does not work that great with third-party plugins, especially some of the newer ones, as it limits the amount of parameters you can adjust, but overall still a very cool idea. It also has a talkback button which allows you to output the onboard microphone to an artist in another room if the recording booth is located outside of the main control center. I really wanted to integrate this controller into my workflow. I thought it was a good opportunity to not let a device like this just sit somewhere rotting away. The person that sold it to me had no intentions of using it, and I thought it would be cool to use, especially because of the motorized faders and the ability to potentially do some cool automation with it. But it has been a frustrating experience, to be completely honest with you. The Mackie HUI seems to consistently change the position of my pan knobs when launching a new session in Pro Tools. What's worse is that the unit works. The screen, the buttons, the lights. I've done various amounts of testing on it, on the hardware itself. So this is where I found it most difficult, and I think this is the biggest reason that has kind of turned me away from this unit. The faders are not working properly. Don't believe it's an issue with the motors, as all the internal tests, like I've mentioned, that I've done, they operate perfectly fine. The issue, I believe, is the communication between the Mackie HUI and my input and output of my audio interface. See, this device has no USB, so the only way it can communicate is by sending information via MIDI, which shouldn't be a problem, right? Well, I don't know if it's MIDI, the calibration of the faders, the Pro Tools software, but 3 faders in particular are giving me a problem. And in some cases for the faders that do work, I did notice that it's jumping between decibels and not doing it in increments. Now, I spent hours, days cleaning, calibrating, adjusting, checking voltage, reading the service manual, just trying to do everything in my power to make this thing run as perfectly as I can. Interestingly enough, I was able to get Fader 1 to work after who knows how long, but faders 8 and 7, I just cannot calibrate the sensitivity. There's still resistance within the fader. Sometimes if it's too sensitive, it won't register in Pro Tools. It's just a mess. I honestly felt like when I would adjust one, it would change the other one, but Google reassured me that they are independent from each other and that changing the sensitivity on one would not impact the other. And again, it's frustrating because everything on the unit works. I think I would feel different if I noticed like, oh, well, you know, like this light's not turning on when I press this button, nothing happens, or everything works. Everything aside from those freaking faders work. And I almost want to try like running an old operating system, maybe an older MIDI device to see if the communication improves. I don't want to give up, but then again, I do. I just feel like I've done everything in my power. I've researched, I've read the service manual, I went through the rabbit hole of forums from like 2005 that were talking about the Mackie HUI. But you know, maybe just need a little bit more know-how, and for now it'll just kind of put it to the side as a project waiting to be finished. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my Bandcamp page. I appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys have a good one. Peace.